It is. Oh, it is. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Ah, smiling Erica. Hello,
Hi.
hello, hello. Hello, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Hello, 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 hello. How did the dog come about? I've been most curious to hear.
Well, it happened really quickly.
I should say, I shouldn't say it rudely. Sorry, Aurora.
So, she, I mean, we've been looking, kind of keeping our eyes open for another dog for a while. And basically, every dog that I've come across, I was really looking for an older dog because old dogs are usually not adopted out as easily. And I really love old dogs.
Yeah.
So we had been looking for older dogs. And for one thing, around here, we don't really have any like old dog specific rescues. I follow several,
Uh-huh.
but they're like in other parts of the US and it's hard to do out of state adoptions. So
Yes.
I had been keeping my eye out, and every dog that I came across was a dog that was either needs to be the only dog in the home because, they don't get along with others, or if they do get along with other dogs, they weren't cat friendly. And ideally, if we were going to add another dog, I wanted it to be one that would be able to get along with the cat because eventually we would like to have the cat not have to be in the room by himself all day since he and Tank don't get along. So that was like non-existent. If there happened to be a dog that liked other dogs, it was definitely, no go on anything else. So I one of the rescues that I follow shared a post from a different rescue in Oklahoma about this poor dog that they had just rescued that had like mange and all kinds of medical problems, and they were asking for funds to help try to,
Oh.
take care of the dog medically. And I went to this other rescues page just to see, are they in Oklahoma? Where are they? And I scrolled down a few posts, and there was a post about Aurora. And I hadn't seen her name. And so I just, saw her picture, and I was scrolling through and I was like, oh, she's really cute. And it said, we've had her for months and we don't understand why. She's really sweet. Like, we don't know why no one has snatched her up yet. She's great with dogs. She's good with cats if you do a slow introduction. She's good with kids, blah, blah. She's healthy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this sounds promising. And she's adorable. And then
Oh.
I went
Oh.
up to the top,
Oh.
and then I went up to the top and I saw her name. And that was what really caught my attention because what I keep telling myself with the dog situation is there are millions and millions of dogs out there that are adoptable. And so I am never going to know by myself what the right dog is going to be. So I have to trust attunement to a
Yes.
certain extent, right? I've got to trust attunement.
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
this
Exactly.
is this I would not say this to everybody because they would think I was nuts, but you I know will understand this. I have had
Of
the
course, we
word
are nuts, though. That's
yeah, well, I have had the word Aurora written in my notes for several years and had no idea
wow.
why. Had no idea why. I kept
Wow.
I kept seeing because,
Wow.
a lot of times I will have these patterns of words or things that I see or hear like all the time. And I sometimes I know why, right? And it's just like, and I still write it down and I think about why that's coming. But this one, I don't even remember where it started, but several years ago, it was just nonstop.
Wow.
I was seeing and hearing the word Aurora everywhere. And it got to the point that I was like, okay, I'm going to write this down. And I don't know what this means, but I'm going to trust that I'll figure it out later. Like at some point later, this is going to make sense. And so when I saw that her name was Aurora, I was like, okay, attunement, this has to be attunement. I don't know what else this would be.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
then this was really cool. When we were on our way, I assumed that we were going to go meet her. We submitted a foster like a trial foster application, which lets us
Ah,
foster her for several weeks before adopting to make sure that like she and
yeah,
Tank get along and everything works.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
I
yeah.
submitted this application, and I assumed that once it, if we got approved, that there would be like, well, come meet her, like make sure that you guys like her. Then, maybe we do like a have the dogs meet and we'll come check the house, like make sure everything's good. But they are so, oh, they're understaffed and they've got a ton of dogs and a bunch of like medical issue dogs that they're trying to take care of right now. So they're literally like pushing dogs out the door. So we had no idea. Yesterday they said, okay, let's schedule the meet and greet. So we went to meet her yesterday thinking we were just going to meet her. And they were like, here you go. Yeah. Like, wow, okay.
Wow.
So it was,
Oh,
I was not expecting.
now it's shifted from attunement to force of circumstance.
Yes, yes. But so there was another cool thing that happened. So when we were on our way to meet her, I kept thinking about Axel. And so I thought, okay, I'm trusting in
Oh,
attunement again here, that if this is something I need to pay attention to, like I'm going to trust that something's going to happen and I'm going to know that this is something I should move forward with. And so she, Axel used to do this thing. I've never seen another dog do it, and it used to make me laugh so hard. When he would get like really, I mean, he didn't get really excited all that often, but when he would be excited and like if he had been outside running around or if he was really hot, he would come inside and he would immediately find a cold floor, like tile or wood or something,
yeah, yeah.
and he would flop down and he would the way he laid down, he would have his sometimes he would have both of his arms like straight out, sometimes he would have
Yeah.
one tucked under, and then he would have the opposite leg tucked under his body, so he was kind of doing this like, you can't really, it was kind of
Wow.
like this.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
always called it his Michael Jackson move because to me it looked like he was going hee hee. And
Yeah, yeah.
so I always would laugh at him, and I had never seen another dog do that. And she was so excited to be out. And then all of a sudden, she flops down on the floor and does the Michael Jackson move. And I was like, oh my gosh, Axel used to do that. And I've
Wow.
never seen another dog do that. And the lady at the rescue
Oh,
said,
oh,
she said, I like to think that when a new dog reminds someone of their
yeah,
former dog in some way,
yeah,
when they do something
yeah.
like that, that it's the former dog's way of saying, I like
Accept,
this one, this
accept,
is the one to pay attention to.
acceptance.
And
Wow,
I was
that's
like,
something to say.
I
Wow.
know. And I was really shocked that she said that. And I was like, I agree. I agree. So I'm feeling good from an attunement perspective about
Yeah,
Aurora.
yeah,
Um,
yes.
so we'll
Can,
see. We'll see how it goes.
is she there? I mean, can you put her on camera?
I have her in the kennel because she and Tank. So she was almost adopted by someone in April, and the lady said 2 days before they were going to sign the adoption papers, the foster's personal dog, who
Yeah.
they had gotten along okay so far, just like lost it for some reason and attacked Aurora. And she actually had to have surgery. Her throat
Wow.
got ripped open. She has a big scar on
Wow.
her side. So we've been being really careful about not having Tank and Aurora like unsupervised together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have Aurora in her kennel because she is, oh my, she's a little spitfire. She is so curious and like
Yeah.
she doesn't tear things up, but she just like wants to,
Investigates everything.
yes, she investigates everything.
Oh,
So she
good.
is
Oh, good.
in her
Oh, good.
kennel,
Oh, good.
and
I
she'll
was
probably start
really
making noises.
impressed with the
Do you
interaction
want to say
between
hi?
Aurora and Tank. All right, let me meet her. Hello, Aurora. Hello, dog.
Hi.
Hello,
Yeah,
hello,
say
hello,
hi.
hello, hello,
No,
hello.
baby, you have to say.
Oh, yeah, I feel for you that you're in the cage, dog, but it's got to be,
I
I
know.
really feel for
Sorry.
you. Sorry, sorry.
Okay.
But
You
soon you'll be out. Soon you'll be out.
over
So,
here on your bed,
um,
please. Lie down. Thank you.
does Tank go to her when she's in the cage?
I haven't really let him. He's kind of,
Oh,
I've
yeah,
made him stay on his bed.
yeah.
He is doing his typical behavior of he used to do this to Axel all the time, and he got away with it because Axel was so
Yeah.
chill. But he, whenever another dog is around and has a toy, Tank's entire life mission becomes about taking the toy away.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
then as soon as he gets that toy, if the other dog gets a different toy, then he can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about dominance. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's been kind of trying to do that to her, and she's not as chill about it as Axel was.
Yeah.
She
Good. Good.
doesn't
Good.
mean, but she's not, she's like,
Not going to be bullied, in other words. Yeah.
So I'm
Good.
trying to kind of keep them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
But that's what surprised me on the video, that Aurora was playing with the toy, and Tank was completely sort of chill over there.
because
And
yeah, we were.
all right. Okay, so that's why that's what struck me, that
Yeah.
he was not involved in any way. He was
Right.
sort of minding his own business, and there was an acceptance which was really surprising to me, that I saw, of both of them, of each other.
They're definitely still feeling each other out, but
Yeah,
so far, I mean, their meeting went surprisingly well. Tank didn't bark. He put his hair up, but he didn't really get into any big thing. The real test, and we're gonna try to do that this weekend, is to see how Sarah
yeah,
Aurora, because
interesting.
is a whole nother ball game.
Oh,
And
in what way? In what way? What? In what way?
so she, for example, she and Axel got along great because again, Axel was just like he would let anybody. He was like, I don't want to be in charge. Like you're good. If you want to be in charge, that's fine.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have any issue. And she bullies the crap out of Tank, which I think is hysterical because Tank always bullies everybody else.
It is hysterical. Wow.
It's karma like to a T.
Yeah.
And so when they play, she will put him in his place. Like she'll go up and take the toy away from him, just walk up and take it right out of his mouth.
Wow,
He
interesting.
doesn't challenge her, which is interesting. Like I think he's kind of scared of her.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the interesting one to me because Aurora, the people at the rescue said, generally speaking, she is pretty submissive and doesn't tend to get into any big thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think she's as submissive as Axel was. So I'm curious to see how it goes with Sarah.
Yeah. Well, I hope she's not too submissive, that she does kind of stand up for herself a bit.
I agree because that used to always, it was so funny. And actually,
Tank kind of deserves it, so I don't feel too bad for him. Yeah.
Actually, this brings me back to our topic of ease because I was thinking this morning about how Axel was the epitome of ease in terms of way of being. He so embodied ease and just general. And it was so interesting because it wasn't that he didn't. It wasn't that he just didn't care.
Right.
He didn't like bob around and do nothing.
Yeah.
But he was just so go with the flow, very easy. Nothing bothered him. And so, he would, it always bothered me that Tank would push Axel around and take his toys and do all that. And I was always thinking like, Axel, stand up for yourself. Yeah. But that was what was so funny was it bothered the heck out of me, but it did not seem to bother Axel at all because he was so good at the whole ease thing. It was like, whatever, that's fine. You can have that toy. I'll just go get a different one. So
interesting. Would you say Axel had no agendas?
For sure.
That's really, really, when you said that about Axel, it just struck me, ease. It is associated with having no agendas, which is not caring or being uninterested.
Right.
It's a whole different ballgame. So, it's a different category where you can be interested and care and also have no agendas.
Right.
Yeah. And that's very powerful awareness, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. I like it a lot.
Yes. An agenda is a very different thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And especially too, Axel rolled with whatever came his way. When
Yes.
you have agendas, you have to force stuff to bend to fit your agenda,
Right.
and that's what tends to not cause us to be at ease.
And that, I think, I always used to marvel at the incredible juxtaposition between Axel and Tank, that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
could not have been two more opposite creatures. And it always fascinated me that they got along so well, being so incredibly different.
yeah,
But I mean, you can see that, I think, so easily. I was always amazed at, if, I mean, Tank is such a creature of habit. And when anything changes, it's this huge ordeal. He
yes,
fights
yes,
it, fights it. And
yes.
Axel, oh my word. I mean, I put him through, we moved 800 times. There was always something different happening in my schedule. And he would just roll with the punches, no big deal, whatever, I'm good with whatever. And it is really amazing to me how both of them provide such a valuable example in terms of ways of being.
Yes,
They are
yes,
both equally
yes,
valuable in terms of showing you different ways of being.
yes, yes. Magic, absolute, absolute magic. One thing I would recommend or suggest is that when Tank and Aurora are together and
Hmm.
you're watching them, the moment that Tank starts
Hmm.
initiates the bullying behavior, you jump on him.
Yes.
You have that conditioning, right? When the thought, because there's always the thought and then there's the commitment. At the moment they cross that commitment line, bam, you're on it.
What I have
Boy, you can uncondition that really quickly. Yeah.
That's what I've been
But you
doing.
have to watch it like a hawk, really watch it and watch his psychology because you want that commitment, right? The
Yeah.
moment you've transgressed between commitment and action,
And
there's that nervous, tentative, unknown territory. Yeah,
and that is one of the reasons that I've been monitoring all of their interactions really closely, because I'm trying to just nip that in the bud. But
good,
it is
good.
so funny
Yeah.
how much his intent is just written. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can see it, and he thinks he's being really sneaky, but he's totally.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was earlier
Yeah.
this
So
morning.
once you've got him conditioned, at least in your presence, then I would recommend, you leave them together, but you leave the room, but you kind of spy on him, and that he thinks you're away. And the moment he thinks you're away, that's my chance.
Oh,
That's when you got to
right.
nail him,
And
especially.
that's the trouble, and that is the thing that I have always
Yeah,
said
yeah,
about the one of the biggest differences between him and Axel for me was that Axel, I think, had a genuine intent to goodness. He was genuinely trying to do the right thing. And to,
yes,
to the point that I genuinely don't think doing the wrong thing
yeah.
really ever crossed his mind. Like it,
No, it was not never a possibility for
right.
him. Yeah.
It wasn't like I'm going to stop myself from doing this. He just didn't, he was just good. He didn't
Do
do
it. Yeah,
bad things.
yeah,
Hank will force himself under certain circumstances to do what he's supposed to be doing, but the moment you turn
yeah,
back, and
yeah,
it doesn't matter how many times you punish him, whatever, it doesn't matter. The next time he has a moment to himself,
yeah.
right back to it.
So one way you can monitor, unless you've got other, is to get onto Zoom with yourself on both the phone and the laptop, and then you can on the phone look through the laptop, right, and monitor him. Spy on poor old Tank, but he's got to learn. I'm sorry, and he can learn. The other thing is that this is not an entirely new situation for him because he is familiar with Tank. I mean, with Axel.
Yeah,
So, it's not like it's some great new shakeup for him. And he may really be happy to have Aurora there.
I
But
think he will. I think he will.
yeah,
He always seems to enjoy when Sarah's here, so.
exactly. Despite getting bullied, which is fascinating. And he's such a classic wimp bully.
I know, I know. It is amazing. I mean, mom's always talking about how one of the reasons she likes kindergarten is because it is such a fascinating study in human nature just on display.
Yes, yes.
For me, that is Tank 100%. Like he is such a fascinating study.
Yeah, yeah.
ESP just on display, like no shame, absolutely no shame. It's amazing.
it's interesting to me how you have the same psychologies in the dogs and in the chickens,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Because I forget their names now, but the big bully one is like Tank, somewhat,
Yes, she
and
is.
then the one that sort of is the really good one is like Axel. What's her
Yes.
name?
So the bully is Rose, and the really good one is Ethel, or is Pearl.
Pearl. That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah, very interesting. But the bully one is more like Sarah, no?
Mm,
Rose, no?
I would say she's sort of a combination.
Ah,
Sarah is not at the same level that Axel was, but she does genuinely want to do the right thing. She has her moments of slipping up and being
that's
kind of a little
interesting.
sneak,
Okay.
but she does want to do the right thing. I really think with Sarah, it's more yeah, so I would say with Tank, for me, I mean, you can see it on like written on his face when he's doing the whole like I'm trying to take your toy away from you.
Yeah.
Genuinely tell that he has no interest in the toy itself.
Right,
He's only doing that because he's trying to be an asshole, basically.
right.
And with Sarah, her bullying behavior is not, I don't think, intentional bullying. I think it's genuinely I
Instructional.
I want that toy and I'm gonna take it. You know, I'm gonna play.
Interesting.
And so I don't think it's more with her. I think it's sort of like I'm not gonna let you push me around kind of a thing.
Yeah. Do you think there's some mothering of with Sarah to Axel, like sort of instructing him,
Could
school?
be, could
Yeah.
be.
It just strikes me with the little I've seen of, well, not that little, but I see Sarah interact with Kay, and sometimes she sits there with you also. So you sort of get a feel of her, and yes, she's got that nerviness to her, but like the typical suburban mother, she's got very much the same psychology.
He is kind of a Karen. I could see it. Yeah.
True, yes. There you go. Well, maybe we'll start calling them Sarahs now instead of Karens.
Yeah.
Because Karen is supposed to be, well, it's either very positive or very negative, the way I understand it, no?
No, yeah. No, Sarah is good. She's a good dog. She has her moments of being a little stink, but for the most part she's good. But that's what's so fascinating to me
She
with
strikes me as a bit frustrated, Sarah.
I think so. That's what fascinates me with all dogs, but especially with Tank. I feel like I have rarely come across dogs that are like this. We had one, oh God. Um, my one of my stepdad's dogs was this way. But it's I mean to me it's a rare quality to see in a dog where there is genuinely no, well, I don't want to say no interest in doing the right thing, but that the interest in doing the right thing is purely for their own personal gain, if that makes sense. Like
Correct. It's not because it's right, it's because it benefits me. Right
and
is irrelevant. Yeah, well, if it was the wrong thing, I'd still do it. It's just
right.
because it benefits me. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's such a I feel like that's a really rare quality for a dog. Most dogs just want to please, they want to be good.
yeah. That is somewhat rare, but he was false dog, yeah?
Jenny was Phil's dog. Yeah, she was oh God, she was so awful. And
I wonder where she got that from, maybe.
and that was the other funny thing was really that was another really bizarre pair. Jenny and Brandy were mother-daughter, and Brandy was a total Axel. I mean, she was one of
Wow.
the sweetest. I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolute joy. She was so good. She was so sweet. She never did anything wrong. And then there was Jenny, who was just the total opposite.
Yeah.
And
Fascinating.
so I just, yeah, I think that's really fascinating
Fascinating.
when you see
Fascinating.
that. And with
I Yeah.
Sarah, I don't see that attitude. I think she genuinely wants to do the right thing.
Good.
She's a little squirrely, but
Yeah, yeah,
Tank
yeah.
does
But I
not.
think that squirreliness comes from a frustration level.
It could be.
And I wonder if the paw licking thing, I really recommend it if this isn't a mineral deficiency or something, to really get that checked out, because, it bothers Kay so much. And it's something that Sarah feels she has to do. And you've got this massive conflict. So every time, Kay, stop that, Sarah is even more frustrated. And
Right.
it's a no-win situation for both of them a little bit. It sours the relationship somewhat. And I feel it's affecting Sarah. Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah, I mean, she does seem to have that sort of butthurtness about her whenever that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. I
Yes.
mean, it's like, I can just hear her. It's like, seriously, this is like really bothering me here, It's like, come on. Yeah.
Uh,
And the way Kay reacts to it is very strong.
yes.
So it's like, I'm not doing something wrong, but you treating it as if it's something wrong, you know?
And it's funny. I have said this to mom several times, and I don't think she has asked them about it, but Sarah is always like chewing on herself or like
Yeah.
digging her
Yeah.
ears or, whatever. And Axel used to do that all the time. And he was horribly allergic to like everything. I mean, he was allergic to everything. And
Interesting.
I would take him in to the vet all the time. And I mean, we tried changing his food. We tried putting booties on him when he went outside because he was
Wow.
in the grass. We tried putting steroids in his ears, but they didn't want to do that forever because that's bad for their liver. We tried all
Yeah.
these things. And then I found out, like way late in his life, that you can get your dog an allergy shot, just like people.
Yeah. Wow.
Did not know that because we kept giving him allergy medication and it was doing nothing.
Wow. Interesting.
I thought it was so bizarre
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
had never, none of his vets had ever recommended that for us.
Yeah.
And so,
That is bizarre, right there.
isn't it weird?
And it's
And
something to keep in mind. Sorry to interrupt your story, but sometimes the most obvious solution when you're going, people assume it's
right,
already been tried.
right, right. So I kept saying to mom, like Sarah, I mean, I have seen so many ear infections because of Axel. What they start doing and what their
Yeah.
behavior is like. And every time we're over there, I'm like, oh, it looks like Sarah's ears are bothering her. And mom will say, yeah, I took her to the vet and they said nothing's wrong. They looked in there,
Yeah. Yeah.
they said
Yeah.
nothing's going on. And I have suggested several times, if I were you, I would just ask them to give
Yeah.
her the allergy shot. Like,
I agree. I agree. Absolutely.
I
And
think
also to check for the vitamin deficiencies. Yeah.
even if it's something that they don't think she needs, it's not going to hurt her. And,
Exactly.
and they're not with her all the time. You
Yeah.
are. You know when something's wrong. So sometimes you have to say, I know you don't think anything is wrong, but I think we need to try something. And I don't think she's taken her to get an allergy shot yet. But I mean, Axel used to do that all the time, and I felt so awful for him because they're miserable.
Yeah. No, it's a sad business. And, the fact that it bothers Kay, that adds to it. Because now you not only have the physical thing that's bothering Sarah, but she's also becoming a bit neurotic,
Right, right,
as a result of this. She doesn't want to be upsetting Kay,
right.
but she is. And, and she also, like that butt hurtness. I mean, that's, to me, is like, it's too clear there, I mean, I feel a bit for Sarah, it's like, come on. It's unfortunate that it really gets to Kay so much, that it really bothers her. Yeah. But it's not good for the dog, her botheration. That's what I'm
I
trying to say.
understand that because she passed that trait on to me. That I'm very sensitive to noises, and that licking noise
Yeah.
totally drives me crazy too. But
Interesting.
you know,
Interesting.
it is
But, you're talking about the dogs and their personalities and, how Phil's dogs, the mother and daughter, were so different. I really look, at one time it used to be nature or nurture in terms of how we are influenced. And it was this big debate. And it always fascinated me why it was an either or.
right.
Even as a kid, it's like, hello, seriously, you can't see it's a combination. Why are you trying to force it into either or? But, over the years, I feel the nature part is definitely the smallest part of it.
Yeah.
I definitely do. And I do feel also that circumstance tends to favor it. When we do see the similarity, we focus and emphasize on it, and we make it so so the nurture locks in the nature, especially when it comes to parents and their children. They like to see themselves, so they really emphasize that,
Yeah.
those similarities. But it's also, it's a confirmation bias logic, in other words. When you
Absolutely.
look at it through that lens, the whole thing changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fascinating. So I feel that, yes, the nature has a part, but it's fairly small, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it can easily be overridden.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and this is actually borne out with the alcoholics.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a post that goes around where the two brothers end up, and they're talking about their lives, and the one his life's a mess, and he beats his wife, and he says, well, what do you expect? This is what I grew up with. My father's alcoholic, and it's what he did. And the other brother's got a successful life, happily married. He says, well, what do you expect? My father was an alcoholic who beat my mother.
Yeah.
So, when and that's so often that kids, I know for me, I absolutely intended to not be my parents.
Right.
So I do feel, the nature nurture thing. And it's a confirmation bias. I think we can so be anything that, if you get encouraged, and the cueing of, oh, well, you just like your mother or just like your father, you start to believe that, and you make it so.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think it's particularly accurate, actually.
Yeah.
Really fascinating. Really, really fascinating. Now, when it comes to, physical stuff, that's a little different.
Yeah.
Where, okay, you've got a tendency to heart disease or whatever, that's a little different. I just find it so fascinating how the psychology, yes, there may be, like a statistical tendency towards something, but I'm cautious of that, because unless the kids were raised in circumstances where that wasn't reinforced, how are you going to know that it wasn't just simply reinforced by nature?
Right.
I mean, by nurture, sorry. You can't say, right? So, yeah, well, I mean, I suppose they could do studies in adopted kids, I would imagine, But that whole debate has sort of fallen aside anyway. So I don't see it being around very much anymore. Very interesting. I love this. I'm so happy that you have Aurora, and the magic of it is too fascinating. It's the name of Ryan and Janelle's daughter, the youngest one, the baby.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. But for you, the Aurora thing was long before that, if I'm understanding
It
correctly.
was, and I remember the first time I heard, because they have Aurora and Juliet, right? Which I also love that name.
Correct.
Yeah, I
And
remember
then
the first
and
time,
Pierce, the boy, yeah, yeah.
the first time I heard that Aurora was their daughter's name. I was like, oh, I mean, it's another, it was another example of like, there it is again,
And
here.
actually, right now, because of some unusual, I forget what it was that's going on in the weather or whatever, the aurora borealis is going to be visible in New York.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how strongly, but still, it's just going to be visible much further south than normal, significantly further. Yeah, yeah. So that was really interesting. I saw that, I think, just yesterday. You could probably Google it and see the details.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
I was trying to see where the earliest.
I do enjoy the algorithm sometimes. It's a little too strong for me on Facebook, but I do click on some stuff and then I get more similar stuff, like the space stuff. And then I follow that. So,
Right.
did you enjoy? Shatner?
Yes. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I thought that was cute and fun, and his reaction, he's kind of a sweetie underneath all that bombast a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. But as I was watching the rocket, I thought, if I was nasty, I could say, one big dick going up into space in a really large dick.
Yes, there you go.
You saw the phallic symbol of it, right? And nobody commented on it. I thought this was too fascinating. I'm like, hello, is it just me?
Right, right.
I've seen one comment. It just came to our mind because, okay, Shatner's become very much a beloved figure now. But he used to be. There was a long period where he was just regarded as a big dick, and this is it. So I thought, well, there you go. If I was nasty, I would make that comment, but I wasn't nasty because I do like him now. I do like him now. Yeah. Yeah, and I never thought the criticism of him was fair when he said about the Trekkies that they must get a life. I thought that was a very genuine and honest thing. I mean, some of those people, okay, what do you people mean when they say get a life? I never figured this out actually.
Right.
Yeah. I see it with gamers all the time. They say, well, they play games all day, and they say, wow, I should get a life. You have a life. You play what you really enjoy. You're doing something that you are really passionate about. How is this? If you were an artist, say, people would say, oh, wow, that's so cool. What's the difference? Yeah.
Back to that whole thing we were talking about today about how we feel like we're supposed to be productive in order to be valuable, that we also apparently have categories of productiveness.
Yeah. I sort of say, what do you mean by get a life? Okay, be boring. Go and do stuff that you don't like doing for what? It just makes no sense to me anyway. Yeah. But I think it's one of those BMN logics where they justify stuff and force these ideas.
Yes.
One of the things with the BMN and religion, I think I mentioned it maybe, or it just came up yesterday somehow, was just thinking about how it's so built into the very notion of religion. Religion is something is defined as being a religion when there's a deity and specifically when worship is involved.
Right.
So what is worship? Praise and glory be. Isn't that like just absolute BMNness?
Mm-hmm.
Like seriously, your God has got an ego. You need to praise it and say glory to you. It's like, hello, are you really thinking about what you're doing?
Right.
Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. It's really, really, it's so obvious, but yet it's so, taken for granted. And I was watching that movie I was talking about, the Trinity movie.
Oh, yeah.
They had the ranchers and then the bad guys were harassing them, but they were kind of like Amish, but they didn't have the uniforms. So, religious, so we're not into violence and all this. And, and they kept saying, praise God and glory to God and all this. And I said, you earnest, good people, and I, you feel for them and you like them, but you don't listen to what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So somebody made a quote too in a post, at least in the group, to say, the religious will be obedient and do what they told, regardless will do what they're told, regardless of what it is, and spiritual will do the right thing regardless of who says it. Mm-hmm. They said it in a better way. But yeah, the distinction between doing what's right and doing what's obedient, right. That's a big difference. So yeah, religion doesn't really focus on doing what's right. It focuses on being obedient, which right. is very, and also it focuses on, the primacy of praise, which right. is really fascinating, and worship, which that's your job as being religious. If you don't praise and worship, then you're bad,
Right. Well, and that, what you were saying a second ago reminds me again, to me, that's like one of the clearest examples of just total nonsense.
Yeah.
Is with Abraham in the Bible. You are literally going to kill your child because God told you to do it. Exactly. Do you really think that's the right thing to do? Like, exactly. And that faith or whatever is supposed to be this
right.
wonderful example of, of faith.
Fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Too crazy.
Yeah. I agree.
I wonder though, how it's all like, at least at the time when that came about, I can understand the logic and the necessity of a very paternal authoritarian logic, because you're dealing with a slave culture.
Right.
So in a slave culture, especially one that's been newly liberated, They can run away with themselves, and the lack of discipline, and it can cause depression even, like prisoners who've been in jail for a long time. When they're outside, they can't handle it, they need that. So I can see that being effective in the circumstance, and necessary almost, from Moses's point of view. But that's the problem for me with most of these things. They get locked in. I'd like to see a religion that's constantly updating.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see. Why is it that ancients, it's always the ancients, and I see this all the time, according to the ancient literature, or ancient, wisdom, or ancient spiritual, whatever. It's always that word ancient, right? That comes into it. Somehow, back in the day, whenever that back in the day was, in ancient times, everybody was wise and sensible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Why was there a time supposedly when everything was so crazy and wonderful?
Right.
Certainly we have nothing to show this in history. Now, I always like to take the opposite angle, and from maximum receptivity, I say I try to imagine how this could be actually true.
Right.
Well, maybe there was a time before male hierarchy started to take over, before the BMNs took over, when actually things were all really good and people were focused on cooperation and maternal societies, and where it's there's a freedom, growth, and creativity and all of this. So it is possible that it could have been, but at the same time, they certainly weren't wise enough to prevent the fall of it. Now, unless there's another sort of a logic to this, where you have many of those ancient civilizations where they just suddenly disappear, right?
Right.
Where that you've really developed your spirituality up to a point, and yes, you all move on to the next reality or whatever it is, yeah.
Right.
And basically, what's left are all of the idiots who didn't want to join in.
Right.
We are the descendants of the nincompoops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now the whole thing sort of takes on a different dimension. It makes a bit more sense. Oh, if you want to go with the aliens and the pyramids and all that, okay. So the aliens came and they started us up here, and we prospered for a while, and okay, they came back, or the spaceship crashed, and then the rescue party came and they took all the ones who were sensible with them, and they left all the rest.
Right.
We the descendants of the rejects.
Yep.
It also makes sense, either way, however you want to cut it, that, there is an argument to be made for potentially that there was. But, when you say back in the day, the ancients, when you talk about this, what time period are you talking about? I mean, any time period like that, it's over. You're looking at over potentially thousands of years. So, you would think there would be a greater influence if this was the case. But still, it's an interesting point. I'm a bit dubious when something's validity is simply valid because it's ancient.
Right. I agree.
I mean, look, the ancients did all sorts of idiotic and foolish things too. But you forget that.
I just saw a quote that was something like that in my quote file. I was looking through my quote file this morning.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, brilliant.
And what was it? Here we go. Here you go. This was from How the Word is Passed, which was a great book. Dr. Clint Smith was the author. And he was discussing how most slave narratives only focus on the exceptional cases where slaves were able to get free, ultimately inferring the illegitimacy or less thanness of ordinary people. And I wrote down, this is so clearly.
Say the last sentence again.
So basically, he was saying sort of white culture. I mean, right, the people who are in charge are the ones that write history, right? They're the ones that write the historical account. So he was saying basically that in narratives from today of talking about only the people who were able to escape slavery and get to freedom, and focusing on that as if these people were far and above exceptional and everyone else was just like totally subpar, that it legitimizes the treatment of all
Ah,
of those people.
right. So in other words, the ones who didn't escape were losers and they deserved what they got.
Exactly. So his quote was, in overly mythologizing our ancestors, we forget an all too important reality. The vast majority were ordinary people, which
Yeah,
is to say they were people just like everyone else. This ordinariness is only shameful when used to legitimate oppression.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is its own quiet violence. And
yeah,
I think that's so true. I mean, we do tend to over mythologize our ancestors or ancient cultures or whatever and forget the fact that these were just people. They
yeah,
were really no different than you or me.
yeah. And also, our ancestors weren't particularly nice people.
That's true. It's very
You
true.
know, and this myth of slaves being black, this is an American thing, really.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you go back in time, all over the world, you had slavery. And in Asia, you've got slavery. They didn't have black slaves. They were Asian slaves. The Romans, they were far less black slaves in Rome than there were white slaves. They enslaved the whole damn continent, for heaven's sake, all of Europe. So everybody's been slaves at some time or another. And all of our ancestors were either slavers or slaves.
Right.
I remember seeing a report once about Americans that went to um, Liberia,
Mhm.
I believe it is. And they went to this, they saw the slave pits there, and these people they had worldview collapse
Yeah.
because the realization that those slave pits had been around for centuries,
Right.
and this like oh crap, so you mean the blacks were selling this, like, yeah, and stuff,
Right.
yeah. So all throughout Africa, even today, you've got this hierarchy and dominance, and it's a continual thing. Not all cultures and in Africa are slave. Some were the victims and some were the dominants. And it was a constant battle type of a deal.
Right.
Some were very peace-loving people who never bothered anybody, just did their own damn thing, but still.
I think
Then you want to say peace-loving, you have to be very careful about that. We look at dolphins and say, oh, they're so nice, but the dolphins in many of those, the females group together in these packs to protect themselves against inadvertent rape, or at least just not inadvertent, just rape, so from the younger males. So it's just fascinating that, even in supposed all these idyllic cultures, you still got this hierarchy and dominance, as part of the paradigm. Yeah.
I think for me, one of the important things that I I remember like really thinking about this when I was fairly young, but it's really become a much more solid understanding and awareness for me post Way of Impeccability that every human person is not black or white, not like racially
Yes.
speaking, but
Yes.
just, it lumping an individual into
Yes.
this category or that category. That's it doesn't work that way. And
No.
even the
No.
people who are incredible people and are really smart or really kind or really whatever and have really awesome contributions to make are not just, you can't just lump them into that category. They also deal with nonsense. They also have their own nonsense. And the people who have a bunch of nonsense, it doesn't mean that there's nothing valuable or useful that they have to contribute either. I
Exactly.
remember that being a big conversation um, when I was young. I remember my grandma, who was not she was definitely racist
Yeah.
for a number of reasons, but very racist.
Yeah.
And I remember her making this big deal about how she thought it was just despicable that we had Martin Luther King Jr. Day because she thought that he was a horrible person because he had been like unfaithful to his wife, or
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
some,
yeah,
and it was like, oh no, what a horrible example of someone to hold up in the Black community. Like they should have what was it? George Washington Carver Day, or, some person that she thought was like a much better example.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember like really thinking about that and going, hmm. And then I remember mom and I having this big conversation about that years later about, look, yes, Martin Luther King Jr. was not a perfect man. He made mistakes. He did things that were not good. But he also did things that were really great for the Black community,
Yes, yeah,
in general. And that doesn't mean, the two do not negate each
yeah,
other. He
yeah.
was human. We are all human. None of us are perfect, or we would have ascended at this point. Like it doesn't work that way. And
Exactly.
that's one of the things that I also think we've talked about this many times, but that's something that I think personally for me was a like foundational pillar of Jesus's teachings that so many Christians just completely like it has just totally gone over their head. Jesus was a man. He was
Uh,
human. Yes, he had some, he contributed some incredible things to humanity. There are many awesome things that we can take away from what he taught. But that was kind of his whole point to me was I'm just a man. Like I'm just a person
exactly,
just like you are. And he
exactly.
was not above fault. He was not
Yes,
above making mistakes.
yes,
And to me,
yes.
anybody, I don't care who it is in the history of humanity, always take what the person is sharing with you with the grain of salt that that's coming from their perspective and their bubble of awareness. And it just because they have said a million things that are really great and helpful doesn't mean they're not capable of saying something
Yeah,
that is totally not helpful. So, run everything through your filter of does
yeah,
this make sense to me?
yeah, yeah. Uh, you know, uh, 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 Jesus is so romanticized, but yet he was trying to make the point that he is a human just like us.
That
You
was
know,
like a
and
huge
yeah, and he said exactly, and he kept making this point: we are all sons of God.
right, right.
You
I
know,
know.
his language, unfortunately, not children of God. He kept saying sons of God. And, it got singularized when he said it in the plural, So he said it about all of us. We're all sons of God. But then it took
And
only and all of this, it got propagandized.
it
And
is quite possible that he did say children of God, and the million times this got
yeah,
translated, it was turned into sons of God.
it's possible. I've seen it so often, though. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because the same way as slavery was so accepted and not really even thought about, same with misogyny. It's something that you see that when you really look at historical figures like that, and you look at the contextual milieu. Now, how much of that is due to the translator or what they actually
Right.
said, I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if we did use the masculine. Um,
It's
it's
possible.
it's it's very fascinating to see that stuff that people so take for granted, then later turns out to be like, seriously, really, wow,
Right.
fascinating.
Um, okay, what was it that you told me to remind you? What did you say?
About want and like.
Yes, that was it.
So we were saying about being at ease when you want something, and I kept using this. Oh, maybe it wasn't with you, but anyway, the example of how we can do things when we want to that we wouldn't otherwise able to do, like the people on Survivor eating the bugs and horrible stuff, right?
Right.
I love that. It just fascinates the heck out of me, and I would love to have a TV show where people say, "Oh, I'm addicted to smoking. I can't give it up," and blah. Okay, here we go. I'm offer you $1 million. You
Yeah,
see,
right. Right.
and see how quickly they change.
Yes.
But I was talking to Sue about this yesterday, and I was saying that I do feel there going to be instances where people will not be able to,
Right.
despite incentives. that they just too indulgent. They just don't want to give it up, no matter how much you pay them. They just can't, because they're too indulgent. Like, for instance, guys giving up sex. I mean, I know there's many challenges for this, right? But I think that, in a situation where you're not truly monitoring with the infrared cameras and they got no privacy, at all, it's like, okay, we're really going to see for sure if this is possible. Do a real true test on it. I think some of them will say, to hell with $1 million. They will be too overwhelmed.
And I mean, that's a big part of the equation to me, is just because they think they should or someone else thinks they should, do they really want to?
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think a lot
And
of people,
exactly.
like with smoking, for example, like they know that it's not good for them, and everyone else tells them that they shouldn't smoke.
Exactly.
But part of the reason that they don't give it up is because they don't want to. They're like, I don't care. I don't care that this makes me sick. I'm going to do it anyway.
That was the fascinating thing to me, that when I mean, I started smoking pretty young, everybody knew smoking was bad, but we smoked anyway, which is really fascinating. I mean, and I remember my father smoking as a doctor. He'd smoke in his surgery.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Can you imagine? It was so pervasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And I always said, I'm smoke because I want to. People say, oh, you're addicted. I said, no, I smoke because I want to. The day I don't want to, I'll stop smoking. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
So, your own internal dialogue is very important on such matters.
I agree.
Yeah. Very, very powerful. But so I was saying, wanting to do things is very important. It changes our frame of perception.
Right.
Yeah? So when we're going into situations where we are not at ease, typically, if I go into it wanting to be there, automatically I am increasing my ease, because I am now choosing to be there, want to be there. Now, that's not all there is to it. We spoke about this last time, the want part, but I didn't add the like part. In other words, just as much as we can say, I want to do this where I normally would not, I shift my motivation. I just decide I want to. There's no need for externality even, right? It's simply a decision that we can make, right?
Right.
It's simply pure choice. That same choice can also be added to like, not just want.
Okay.
In other words, I see somebody that I don't like, and I decide, well, you know what? I'm just going to decide to like them because, well, she's my mother-in-law and I better like her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I change, and you can. We can change what we like just like that, just in an instant, just simply because we choose to. And that choice will greatly shift our ease.
That is true.
Now we spoke about the inadvertency that we have coding that's come about in our program, in our bigger operating system, which was put there by circumstance and just inadvertently. That coding we need to deliberately change.
Right.
So when we are ill at ease, likely we're at ease because of that inadvertent coding that's crept in there for whatever reason. Old associations, childhood, bad experience, whatever the hell. But I can change that through this deliberate intent to change what I want and what I like, to reassign like specifically, not just want, but like. Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing. So I say, hey, I like this. Okay, why do I like it? Now, all right, my I'm in a boardroom meeting or staff meeting, whatever, where it's like usually it's chaos and havoc, and I like it because wow, this is a fascinating opportunity for me to observe and study human behavior and psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So when we start to look at things, if we do need a reason to like things, to say, why do you like this? Well, I don't need a reason. I just prefer to, because liking it is better than not liking it, right? There's a reason for you, okay? But if you now really do need reasons, we can always go back to that reason of learning and growing and observation and study. So you just bring out your scientist. That's your curious person. Your inquisitor. And then that's the reason. Oh, this is interesting. I like it because it's interesting. Everything is interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I were in jail, that would be my, if I were put in prison for whatever reason, that would be my mindset.
Right.
I'm inside the massive experiment studying it, Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Or it's another way this is really fascinating is when you look at people that go undercover, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do it because they like being undercover. The experience itself otherwise would be unpleasant. But when the agent then they have to be in jail for a while, they don't mind because, well, I'm on my mission. I'm serving a greater purpose. So that's a third action we can do is connect whatever the situation is we want to be at ease with a greater purpose.
I like it. Okay.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So three key things. We've got want, like, and purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, meaning, purpose, and significance.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and,
I like that idea. And I mean, I can see, I think this definitely applies for me, and it took me a long time to get here, and I'm certainly still working on it. But like with Tank and with Joe's dad, for example, normally these are not the type of people I would enjoy being around or feel particularly easy around. But
yeah, yeah,
when you look at it from a perspective of both of these individuals,
yeah,
provide me with an up close
yeah,
opportunity to observe
yeah,
BMN, PSP, logic, and behavior, in a way that I can really study this and understand how it works, it
yes,
becomes something that's valuable.
yes. In my gross overreaction, which was very fortuitous to the whole Therese incident of cueing her to be a
Yes,
bitchy person.
yes,
My horror in that, I said, I've got to love everybody, and I'm determined to love everybody, and I'm determined to find goodness in people, no matter how small. And
right.
then because I thought it through to the end, I said, all right, I know it's not there, so I'm going to have to find it. But also, my sophistication said, I'm going to have to emphasize it
Mm-hmm.
without ignoring what is there, the nonsense, but
Right.
emphasizing it to such a degree that it becomes the local reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in other words, I said that I'm going to change how people are, not because I'm forcing a change, but I'm going to give them an opportunity to be at their best with me.
Right.
That may carry over into other situations, but I'm going to get that. And I'm going to deliberately de-emphasize the nonsense and emphasize the good. I'm going to shift the ratio through emphasis.
Right.
And in my mind, in that instance, in my psychology, my awareness, my factual perception, in the relationship with me, they are predominantly good.
Right.
Right.
Well, it makes me think of sort of providing a sandbox environment from like a technical perspective, providing a sandbox environment that allows them to truly be good and have their goodness on display in an environment where that's not a threatening thing to them. I mean, obviously they don't choose goodness in other situations because they don't feel they can, right? But if you provide them with a very specific environment and situation where they can choose goodness,
Exactly.
then they will.
Exactly. And so I come across a crappy person who's behaves crappy in general. I say, how much are you potentially a product of the queuing, that I perpetrated on Therese, but you just get this all day long.
Yeah.
Simply because you are predominantly this way, or even all of the time, right?
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean you are innately this.
Right.
You could
Right.
be complete, like again, back to our nature versus nurture. And
Mhm.
do people come out that are truly evil?
Right.
Or are they evil as a result of circumstances?
Mhm.
And this is a big, big, big point. And I found it fascinating that they did the studies of all the big dictators, Hitler, Mao Zedong, Stalin, um, the Spanish guy, Franco. There was one more, Mussolini,
Mhm.
one more. And they all had the exact same story. They had dominating fathers that used to beat them and bully them
Mhm.
severely, right? It's fascinating that this was a common trait between all of them.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, are they a product now of their environment? How much can you really hate them?
Right.
Did they come out with truly being evil, or was it just, that they were so completely butthurt by their experiences that
Right.
it messed up their psychologies and they're just getting revenge on their fathers through everybody? That's really a sad state of affairs if that's the case. But it comes to this understanding of preposterousness.
Right.
That somebody could really hate everybody simply because they're trying to get back at their father, but the father's dead. They can't.
Right.
It's so preposterous. They lose all sense of rationality and perspective, and then the things start to take on a momentum of their own, and the brain starts to get rewired because of the emphasis upon emphasis, and they end up believing their own crazy stuff.
Right.
But
Right.
still, did they start off initially
Right.
as evil? This to me, I really don't think so, actually.
Right.
I really don't think so. Yeah. It makes no sense from a evolutionary point of view for beings to be evil.
Right.
Yeah, and I can't see how, especially back in the day, when killing your babies because they had deformities or whatever was certainly a product of things where a truly evil baby wouldn't have been just killed.
Right. Right.
And also, evil babies, they wouldn't be good for the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Babies that are out to sabotage everybody, cause other people pain and hurt. When especially in human evolution, teamwork, working together was what made us survive, having not the physicality to overwhelm other
Absolutely.
creatures. To survive on your own was a very dicey business, but teamwork is what made us survive.
Right.
So anybody who's not a team player is going to get weeded out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So, if that is just an accidental thing, but I don't see it, because I think you would see true evil in animals then more regularly too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you do see it sometimes where the animals go a bit crazy, but like this, it's well known with lions. Lions aren't man eaters unless they're doing it out of some kind of revenge. They aren't,
Right.
they aren't naturally and instinctively so,
Mm-hmm.
which is fascinating. So, this, and also, not just that, which I can understand was not necessarily evil, but okay, if you're going to eat, but just to kill people rather than eat them for food.
Right.
But I saw a story about teenage elephants that
Yeah.
had grown up without adult supervision. You saw the story, right? Where they were bullying like rhinoceroses and hippopotamus and stuff. And they were just these hooligans, young teenage elephants. And
Yeah.
I said, now there you go. I don't think there's natural evil. This to me was an example of precisely how it's the nurture that and it runs amok with itself. And then it has its own reinforced loop. I found that too fascinating. That really, really was really surprising to me, because especially elephants, they have this image, but we have to look at the reality. There is definite hierarchy involved in elephant society.
Right.
Absolutely, Yeah. I don't know of any society that I'm aware of that doesn't have hierarchy, but I suspect somewhere in the animal kingdom, likely it does exist. I hope to be made aware of it at some point.
Yeah.
Because I love this too. Other myths that people really cling to big time, that they say, oh, man is the only creature that has war and does torture and rape and all this stuff. That's absolutely not true. There are many animals that engage in warfare. This is very common.
Right.
Slavery, same thing. There's plenty of animals that engage in slavery. Or cat playing with the mouse. If that's not torture, then I don't know what the hell is. So this myth that man does these things that you don't find in animals is complete nonsense.
I
But
agree.
I do wonder, though, that there's always these exceptions, and I'd be interested to see any kind of an animal or society where there isn't hierarchy.
Yeah, I agree. I
Very
think the
interesting.
only ones I know of where that doesn't seem to be a predominant part of their life is in species that are not communal species. Like they literally spend 95% of their life alone,
Yeah. But then too, even in those, look at the tigers. They are notoriously solitary, and they only get together when they mate, and then they go off. But the hierarchy is there because they're
Right.
territorial.
Right.
So, if you're territorial, then you're hierarchical, no?
But it's just, I think in those cases, it's not as much on display because there's not as much opportunity,
Exactly. You just don't observe it.
but it
Right.
still exists,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And when there is, when the mating time does come around, there's most decidedly the competition between the males again. Which,
It's true.
yeah, it's not like they're just leaving it up to, but still, if you do leave it up to some choice, from a leaving it up to the woman to choose, it makes you wonder what the choices are,
Right. How do you choose? What do you do to make that decision? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so on the topic of emphasizing goodness, I know we talked about this a lot in the PSP course, but while we're thinking about it, I would love to do some
Yeah.
examples. So something I remember we talked about, I think, at one point, the idea of, you just said it could be the most minute, tiniest little display of goodness. But if you were present when they did that, or if you know that they have done something like that, to like really make a big point of mentioning that and making a really big deal of it and talking about how great that is and oh, this is really awesome because blah blah blah, um, and that to bring a lot of attention to that particular.
Oh, you mean in terms of the relating to other people?
uh well, maybe, but I was talking about specifically like a BMN or just somebody
Right, right.
who you're wanting to cue them to be
Yeah,
good
yeah,
in your
yeah,
presence.
yeah. So, for me personally, it wasn't so much about things that they did, but about what they are rather than the things that
Okay.
they did.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because now otherwise you reinforce behavior, which especially with BMNs, they can fake.
Right.
So I paid attention to, for instance, just the innate ability to, friendliness, kindness, stuff like this, warmth, positivity, and this is overall general goodness. I just treated people as if they were good. And
Mhm.
that's how I emphasized it, right? By zooming in on that part of them that was so deeply buried, but that desire to be good, even if that desire was to be a good narcissist, they're still trying to be good.
Right.
Okay, so you're trying to do stuff that's good for you. You haven't intended to goodness, even though it's messed up.
Right.
You still haven't intended to do good. Your idea of what is good is messed up.
Right.
So it wasn't so much an attention on behaviors as on innateness, on potential, on possibility.
Kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've watched the show Ted Lasso, but it kind of reminds me of the premise of that show where so Ted Lasso is about a guy played by Jason Sudeikis, American football coach who moves to England to be,
Yeah.
a like soccer,
Coach.
football,
Yeah.
like a real football coach. And
Yeah.
he has no idea, like he's never played soccer before. He doesn't know any of the rules. He doesn't know anything about it. And he becomes the coach of this football club. And everybody there is like, what an idiot, who in the hell does he think he is coming over here trying to tell us, how to play this game? Like he literally knows nothing. What an
Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
doofus.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Somebody told me about it. It was Kay, actually.
yeah, it's a great show. But
Keep going, because I forget the details. But does he become the coach? I thought he became the coach kind of as a joke, like out of spite, like the wife's owner just did it out of
yeah, so
spite.
So he didn't know that, right? He genuinely wanted to take this job opportunity, but the wife, so the owner of the football club where he becomes the coach is a woman. It used to be owned by her and her husband, and it was her husband's like baby, this
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
his favorite thing. And
yeah.
then they got divorced and she got the team in the divorce. So to spite him, she hires Ted Lasso as this
Gotcha.
total like, oh, he's gonna tank this team, and she doesn't want the team to do well. She wants it to just like totally crash and burn. And so, he has the odds completely stacked against him, and nobody likes him just off the bat, right? They're like, this guy's an idiot because he's coming over here to do this, so we don't
Yeah,
even care what he's
yeah,
like.
yeah,
And he basically has this attitude every single person everywhere he goes of like, I'm just going to treat you like we're friends, like I'm like, and he kind of ignores all of the riffing and the everybody treating him like an idiot, and just he's friendly. He brings the owner, the woman, cookies that he makes every day to kind
yeah.
of like wear her down.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the second season, everybody loves him, and the
yeah,
owner has completely turned around. She wants the team to do really well. Everything changes
yeah,
because he basically treats everyone like they are good. He
yeah,
treats everybody as
yeah.
if they are treating him well, which is interesting.
That is very interesting. So, for me, the skill of this emphasis, it's really about learning to see or hear, perceive is the word, perceive goodness in somebody. And this is a very nebulous thing. Sorry, I wanted to search for Ted Lasso for later on Netflix, because this has now come up again. So
It
is
is
it?
on, I think Ted is on Apple TV.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll check it out. I've got other places I can go and look. That
Okay.
I don't have access to the Apple, but no, it's not here. Anyway, but at least I have it there written down to search for later. So this perception of goodness, it's a very, very peculiar thing in a way, because there's nothing directly that's so. You almost have to sort of wade through your perception of all of the things that you notice and perceive about somebody and
Right.
are aware of, and then zoom into that. It's a very, very, very unusual perceptivity, and it's a relationship that you create, and it's your perception of it is recognized by the other,
Right.
and that's the big deal, that they sort of click at the point, wow, this person actually really does see my goodness. And this is very, so and I really spent a lot of time thinking about it, or my entire summer vacation essentially, in terms of strategizing to do this appropriately. I didn't want it to be where I'm being perceived of, oh, here's this naive person who thinks I'm good when I'm not.
Right. Right.
That's no good. That's no good. It had to be that I'm genuinely seeing the goodness that genuinely exists. And they also are aware that I'm seeing that, I'm finding it, and I'm connecting to that despite everything else. It's not like I'm aware of the other stuff, I'm just not paying attention to it.
Right.
And they're aware that I could, but I don't. So they see that I'm choosing to find that in them. And this is the biggest boon and grace and joy, because finally somebody who actually really sees past my crap,
Right.
sees the real me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the more I did that, the more I developed that skill, and then the easier and easier it became. And I found that then the ratio started to shift.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, because I had a preponderance of an ability to see the negative, I didn't see the moreness as much. Now, for me, it's most people who have nonsense, it's very superficial. The mourners is very, it's there, you know, at least maybe the people that I'm connecting with, but it's certainly a predominant thing, and it's really who they are. Their behavior just tends to be what they think they should be doing,
Right.
rather than their actuality.
Right.
So, you know, it's just like Cheryl, you know, it's just so obvious to me in Cheryl, you know, it's just fantastic. You know.
Yeah.
Cheryl, before we started, was known to be very difficult and, you know, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's
And, you know,
surprising.
kind of like sort of, you know, a very rough mouth on her, and, you know, and kind of speak up and cause scenes and cause trouble and stuff like this.
Oh, that is wild. I can't see that at all.
I know exactly, because that was never really her.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. She on her birthday was on Sunday.
Yes.
So her son said, you know, just she asked him, "Oh, do you see any change?" And he says, "Yes, yes." And you
That's so
know,
exciting.
you know, it's just a whole long thing. I kept it really beautiful of how he says, yes, he's seeing the changes, and you know, how at one time, you know, he understands now. Her mother was total be a man, and you know, he sees he's seeing his mom now through the lens of the interaction with
Yeah.
the grandmother, and how that was. You see, I feel manipulated by her now. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
fascinating.
Interesting.
You know, I mean, the grandmother made out Vivian to be the bad mom to keep her basically taking care, to keep Cheryl taking care of Vivian. Yeah,
Right.
it's just
Right.
horrible manipulation. But yeah, you know, so it's fascinating. You know, just when that I find most people aren't their good selves because they don't have the opportunity or the tools,
Right.
and they just lack that confidence because the BMN culture has said to them, don't be good, you're going to get you know, it's a weakness, you're going to get into trouble, people are going to pick on you, and so that's all. They just simply haven't had the opportunity to do so,
Yeah.
where it is recognized and celebrated and not seen as a weakness but as a strength.
Right.
It's absolutely fascinating. Give that opportunity, and as soon as it's out and it gets a little bit habituated, and people shift, you know, like Cheryl. It's really fascinating. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's too magical. It's so simple, and I don't know, I suppose we could relate this to ease, you
Mhm.
know, that if you trust your ability to connect to the moreness or the goodness in people, when you give them an opportunity, they tend to take it up. Now, maybe in, you know, in sort of a very competitive corporate environment, not so much. But, you know, that school that I was in, you know, Beverly Hills 90210, that was an excessively tough environment in terms of the hierarchy of cliquey. It
Right.
was ridiculously cliquey.
I can only
I
imagine.
mean, absolutely outrageously so. But it didn't matter. You know, I was friends with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, I was very humble in my own way. And I didn't sort of realize at the time or recognize my own power or ability. And I don't want to say power because it's a peculiar word, but the fact that I really could have been more involved in more of those cliques that I chosen to, you know. I mean, I did interact to a limited degree, but I could have taken it all the way, you know, where I could have interacted with people after school and all this. And, you know, I sort of feel now, if I was back in the same situation, I certainly would do so, just from an interest sake of getting to know people. I thought some of them were really fabulous people, but,
Right.
you know, I was a bit on the too humble side, I should say,
Mm.
for that. You know, I didn't make the overt effort because well, I'm being pushy or whatever.
Right.
Whereas it would have been absolutely welcomed, you know. Yeah. So it's very interesting. You know, my perception of myself wasn't the perception that others had of me. It was at odds. So, you know,
Right.
had I made any overtures, they didn't make any overtures to me because, well, I was just in this whole other league. You know, I was just like this kind of, I don't know, total anomaly, I guess. Um, so that, you know, that changed the dynamic, but I didn't see it that way.
Right.
But when you do realize that, you know, when you come from a mourner's perspective, and you react that way. And, it wasn't, people really knew I was really being genuine to really find something to like about people.
Right.
I was determined to, never mind like them, determined to love them no matter what, to find something to love about them. And I really made that effort. And if you really decide to, you can, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
That's something that people don't want to give up easily, especially if you don't do it from a position of weakness.
Yeah.
Like a do-gooder, the typical do-gooder, or the sort of church people that I'm going to love you no matter what. You can, smack me and give you the other cheek. No, I'm not going to give you my other cheek. I'm not going to get smacked in the first place.
Right.
Sorry, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be nasty for you out of thing. You're going to have to make a real effort to be an a-hole to me.
Right.
And when you do this, there's no benefit in it to you.
Right.
None whatsoever, because everybody's going to see that this was totally unwarranted.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're not picking on somebody because they're weak. Now, people sort of support, to a certain degree, bullying of the people who are kind of wimps, right?
Right.
Because they say, well, this will get them to stand up for themselves,
Right.
right? And there is sort of a logic to that. But when you aren't wimpy and you are nice and more, then you enter into a whole different paradigm. So my logic at the time was that I'm not like it was a horse racing analogy. I'm not going to run the race with you around the track. I'm just going to walk across the infield, and I'll meet you at the finishing line. I'll wait for you there.
Interesting.
Change the paradigm. Change the paradigm, in other words, right? So that was what I did. I didn't play their games at all. So that whole hierarchy, infighting, competitiveness, the snarky comments, I didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Right? I could if need be, but I didn't. So because I'm not playing the game, you can't do it to me if I'm not doing it to you or to anybody else. I'm just not part of the system. I'm not running the race. I'm outside of that paradigm. And nobody even thought to do that stuff with me, really, because I just stepped right out of it.
Right.
And I put an end to it. Like when I was there, the guys did this typical thing, two of them, throw something, or here it is. And then, and I just grabbed the one guy by the neck and shoved him against the wall. And that was the end of that. And I never had any more of that, So yes, I'm a very loving person, but don't screw around with me for no good reason, just for, dominance crap.
Right.
So that was it. End of story.
I like it.
Yeah. And there was a story. I don't know. It was, I guess, was appropriate. So my really good friend Russell was his name. Russell was 5 foot exactly.
Okay.
And Russell's philosophy was, I told you about Russell, I think, before, no, or not yet?
Yeah.
And if you can't see me, you're gonna hear me. And then one day, one guy, I don't know what it was. It was just a universe sort of a thing to make a point. I don't know. It was a peculiar thing. But he started ragging on Russell, calling him, oh, you little short shit and all this. So anyway, so I gave, his name was Francois Hugo, very good looking guy. Typical classic kind of good looks. Anyway,
Right.
so I gave him a couple of punches and smacks. I got my knuckle skinned for my troubles, which is where the term knucklehead comes from. Yes, people don't realize this in the movies. Sometimes you see them shake their hands, but I think only once have I ever seen skinned knuckles as a consequence.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you really get. It's a fascinating business. Anyway, but again, too, it was just that. Yes, I'm good, but I'm not going to stand around and allow badness, really nastiness and meanness as well. And I'm willing to do something about it. I told him to cut it out and he didn't want to, anyway, so.
I like it.
Yeah. I still feel there could have been better ways to deal with it, but all right.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel responsible for that, actually. That's so to finish the whole story, to go really in depth here, because in my mind, I and Russell spoke about this. We chatted, and I don't know. The idea came that I had this sort of romanticized idea that yes, if need be, I would defend Russell, and so the situation presented itself where that came about. It's really fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's why I feel a bit responsible for the whole thing.
Right.
Well, sorry for poor old Francois Hugo. Anyway, he's dead now, actually.
Oh
Yeah. It's so him and my girlfriend Avril, and I think there's one or two others, they had a class reunion and they mailed us, and then they on the list of the class reunion they say, people who have already died,
no.
right?
Right.
And so his name and Avril was on there. So yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah. Untimely deaths, in other words,
Right.
way untimely. Yeah, because neither of them were sickly people or anything. So I don't know why or from what, but yeah,
Interesting.
just intriguing. But
Yes.
yeah, I did feel a little bit responsible for poor old Francois getting smacked. But anyway,
That's funny.
it's my brother's name is Francois too. He definitely deserves some smacks.
Ah, nice.
So I don't know, maybe subliminally, I wasn't able to smack my brother, but I came close a few times. But he was much bigger than me. I mean, he's not only physically larger than me, even when I got to maturity. He's still taller than me, but as children, there was a big difference. He's 5 years old, 4 years older than me. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
I never had that. But I was determined to. A couple of times we nearly got into fights because he was really being a shit, and I I mean, I went at him, not physically, but in every other way,
Right.
and it really came close to getting physical,
Mhm.
because I just thought he was being very crappy. And he was, I was just a stupid shit,
Right.
And I saw other things about him, just that, I saw parts of his character which weren't very nice.
Mhm.
He was a bit of a nasty, mean, hierarchical guy, but he wasn't the bully. He would have liked to be, but he couldn't be. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
he took it out in other ways.
Interesting.
Yeah, 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 very interesting. So it's just fascinating to me, even then I saw how subtle stuff comes through.
Hmm.
And we have to be careful of that, the inadvertency. And this is, it's all related to the ease.
Right. Right.
Being not at ease is about, to me, principally about inadvertent influences
Right.
that you're not aware of. So that's the key with a liking, is to specifically and deliberately say, yes, but I like this. Doesn't matter that I haven't liked it. You're in a, but you never liked this before. Yeah, so I'm choosing to like it now. Oh, okay. That's it. You just have to deliberately go and recode.
Right.
It's astonishing how we can change what we like.
Yes.
We tend to accept our likes as this written in stone thing when it's absolutely not so.
Hmm.
As you know, with the eating.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and I truly admire this. Every time I see you eat, I'm like, yes, go, Erica. This is awesome. I truly admire it. It's a profound thing. So we can change that. We really, really can change that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe you can change and you can start to like Tank.
Maybe so.
It's a good start to
Certainly,
really say, well, you know what, Tank? Okay, I haven't really liked you that much, but I'm going to start liking you from now.
certainly made a lot of progress over the years, I
Yeah.
think.
So the key with this is, in terms of what I did in that school environment, was not to say I'm going to like you despite.
Right. Right.
That's very key. I'm going to like you because I'm going to find what's likable in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a big shift. I never liked anybody despite this.
Hmm.
Now, furthermore, this led me to understanding. I remember there was this one girl, Beverly Levitt. I called her Luscious Levitt. And my friend thought this was the funniest thing ever. And I felt really bad for saying that. I gave everybody nicknames. I was really good at that. And, it served me well. I guess that same talent, I transmuted it into, like the way of impeccability names, right? It's finding that key
Right.
essence. But and I shifted it. That wasn't a nice comment that I made because she wasn't a particularly attractive girl. She was a very short girl, but not short. Some people are just short and you see them as short. She was just like a shrunken person, like just,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So and she was very rough and I don't know what her home environment was because most of the kids came out of millionaire families and stuff like that. So she was very rough and it's like I don't know, it's like she was almost living in a slum or something, which was just not the reality for white South Africans at that time. So I don't know how this came about, it was especially there in that school. But she was an absolute ambition hound.
Interesting.
That's it. So nobody liked her because of this. But I think she became the ambition hound because nobody liked her for whatever reason. I don't know. She wasn't particularly nasty. She was just overly ambitious. She always wanted to get up. So, okay, a lot of times, well, what the hell? Nobody wanted to do that. And so she ended up being in the situation simply because nobody else wanted it.
Right.
At any rate, so with her, though, so anyway, when I said luscious leopard, I meant luscious as in luscious as in beautiful luscious.
Right.
So it was kind of a little bit an opposite, but it turned out that she was a drinker. I didn't know it at the time. So my friend thought that's why I called her luscious leopard,
Yeah.
but I was just, it was a nasty thing on my thing to say, and I feel bad for it. Sorry, Beverly. At the time. So I didn't make it public. It was just my own private name for her. But then I changed that, and I said, no, I'll take it back. So I learned to like Beverly because I understood her.
Yeah.
That's how I got to, and I got on fine with her, and I didn't dislike her or find her irritating or annoying or anything. I just understood where she's coming from, that her ambition had sort of corrupted her, and she wasn't nasty necessarily. She was just struggling to survive in a culture that was very dominant, orientating.
Yeah.
So this was her way that she could find a way to survive.
Yeah.
But she wasn't innately negative or nasty. She was just a bit uncouth, maybe, and they sort of exaggerated and held it a bit against her, and it made her a bit resentful, which now further enhanced that. There were some people who were genuinely difficult to like.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, there was one guy, his name was Paul. Now, Paul was, let's say, psychologically severely distorted.
Okay.
So Paul was, the absolute epitome of a nerd. Little scrawny guy, skinny, scrawny, and he was one of those, basically like an idiot savant almost.
Okay.
Right? And he had this good general knowledge, but in terms of social competence, zero. Zero social awareness and social skills, and absolutely overwhelmed with being attracted to girls. I mean, so he was like a little school perv, right? But because he was the sort of a brainiac and he did well in school, all right, that's, I guess, why he was in the school still and not in a special type of a situation. But, I mean, he would touch the girls and, get there. And man, some of those girls who were just, otherwise fantastic girls, they were vicious to this poor guy. Like, and he'd come and try and sit next to them and sit in their little circle, which like, hey, this is our private grouping. We're sitting in the courtyard here, and he comes and he pushes, and they would say, "Fuck off, Paul, get lost." And he would just ignore them. They just wouldn't penetrate, and they wouldn't have to physically push him away. It was fascinating. So, he was difficult to not just like, but even to relate and get onto it, because he was so completely distorted in his psychology.
Really,
I mean, again, I don't even think there was much of a person in there.
Yeah.
He was just almost like raw sort of need, and yes, I mean, he made such a big deal, and he thought that his sort of intellectual side of things, I guess this must be from his family, this was highly prized. Well, heavens knows what he would find himself doing after school with that social aspect. Fine, you do well at school, and this is like the be all and end all. They obviously made his parents happy, but you're a complete screw up in everything else. It like doesn't make any sense. So I remember when it came to the we call it the matric dance. I don't know, what do you call it here? The homecoming.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a big dance and, everything. We don't have the homecoming queen and that, that's not part of the culture. It's just a social dance, just to get together, and the teachers are there and that's it. So, okay. But anyway, to get him a date for this, and
Okay.
some poor luckless girl who was a little bit in the same sort of environment. Like, why did he have to have a date? It was such a big deal in the school that, oh, we have to find him a date. No, he's a jackass. Let him come on his own, bloody hell, find his own damn date. Anyway, so. But yeah, he was difficult to like because there wasn't really a person there, which is really fascinating to me. It was very, very interesting. Yeah.
That is really interesting.
Yeah. And you know what intrigued me about him too is that he put such a high price on his specialness and in terms of intellectual. So at the end of the year, they would have a general knowledge quiz, not for any exam. That's it. They would just give it out for whatever reason. I don't know, but anyway. So, and there was a bit of sort of prestige in doing well in this. And Russell and I, we the ones who got the 2 highest scores, and then came Paul, and this bothered the hell out of him.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Because before he'd gotten the highest always.
Right.
And it was kind of between him and Russell, and then I came along, and then I got tired. Oh God, this was no good. Russell didn't mind, that's why we were friends, I guess.
Right.
But Russell had social skills,
Right. That is funny.
As much as teenagers have social skills.
Yes.
Yeah, I hooked Russell up with my sister, my one who's slightly younger than me. They went out for a while, and this was too great. Russell just loved this. It was fantastic. I mean, I really did him a solid as a friend. Yeah, put in a good word for him. All right, it's like my sister just liked the attention, and I don't know.
Yes.
Later on, at that time she wasn't that way, but later on, I think maybe she was just a little bit on the easy side. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and not then, because that was, I guess, I don't know if it was in the last or I think it was our last year of school, but still, it's, it's not like in American age where people are sexually active.
Right. Right.
Typically only after school, or maybe in the last year of school where it starts. It doesn't start, like where people are starting at 14 or 13 or whatever. It's definitely much later then. Maybe now it's different, but so and I don't know if they ever did anything like that. Maybe it could be. It's possible, but certainly, just him getting a girlfriend was a big deal. So, he never thought this would be a reality in his mind. So, he got hooked up, and there were very few couples in school, as it were. It was very rare. There were a couple, but not many. So I don't know if you were in school, if it was a common thing for there to be.
I mean, depending on the age, but yeah, I mean, certainly
the last 2 years of school.
Certainly in high school, it was a really big thing. I'm trying to think if middle school I had very many friends that were actually.
Yeah. See, I mean, when I was so we only have a primary school and high school, and primary school is, well, the first 7 years really, but the first 2 don't sort of count. They're not really preschool, but they're not kindergarten either, but they're not legitimate school. So, but then the last 5 years are high school. So in those last 5 years, the first 3 of those, definitely, I was the only one that, at least this was in Worcester, but even there, it was very uncommon. And then even in the high school, really, it was only kind of in the last year or potentially the last 2 years. And then it was, like I said, it wasn't a common. It was an exception rather than the rule for there to be a lot of the girls, at least in Camps Bay, they had the boyfriends that were out of school. That was at least not common, but there was more of that than there were in school couples.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of only one that I could think of, actually, which is rather interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's it. It was just the one. And the guy who was interesting, he was a surfer. His name was Greg Parfit.
Okay.
It's interesting how we remember the names from school. But if you could picture the blonde boy
Yes.
god,
Typical.
godling
Yeah.
surfer. I mean, he was a very good surfer, but he had the physicality and the blonde hair and the looks and everything. I remember my English teacher she just loved him. And she tried very hard not to show it, but
Ah,
she
funny.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she wasn't particularly she was grossly overweight, but if he'd made a move on her, something would have happened. Let's put it that way. That was very
Wow.
clear. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not that he was interested or none of the boys, she wasn't particularly attractive. Well, I liked her as a person. She was a great teacher. Tessa was her name. Yeah.
I like
It's interesting when you look at the stuff and you look at the interactivities and how we see so much, and I wasn't the only one who saw that with Tessa, the sort of common knowledge in the class.
Interesting.
Yeah. But still, I guess I'm talking about the school thing because I was never at ease at
Right.
school.
Right. I
Never,
I
never,
certainly
ever, ever was I at ease.
was
The daily stress, particularly of greeting people,
Mm,
was overwhelming for me. I mean, I went to school 60% of the time.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
stayed at home because it was being at school was exceedingly stressful for me.
Right.
I was never at ease, even though everybody else. I mean, I remember my friend Robin. We had a good friendship, and anyway, long story there. But she said to me one day, "Oh, you're so relaxed," and I'm like, "Really? Wow." I this just blew my mind, and then I thought about it. Well, I said, relative to her, well, maybe I am. I mean, she was a very formal girl, yeah, very very prim, but she wasn't really truly uptight. She was just, in her own way, very fixed on being good. So
Okay.
she came across as prim, but she wouldn't. Yeah. So
Interesting.
she's one of those prim girls that if a bad boy had taken an interest in her, she's one of those prim girls that, she's the last one that I would have expected to get pregnant by accident or something like that. My brother dated her for a while, which fascinated the hell out of me. How this came about, I have no idea. But anyway,
Interesting.
yeah. Yeah. And the fact that she actually did date him is my
Right.
point.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But she was very straight in her posture,
Right.
so people thought
Right.
she was stiff, and she was very reserved in her own way, but not timid either. I mean, she was the head girl, and so it was her and me. She was the head girl, and I was the head boy, and then there was a head prefect. They had an unusual three-tier system. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just it's colonial school systems with the prefects. It's not the
I remember
same.
the first time I had ever heard that term was reading Harry Potter.
Right, right,
I
right.
had
And
no
people think
idea
it's
what.
perfect. They read it as perfect, not prefect.
Oh,
They
do
miss.
they really?
Oh, so often they get it wrong. And I've even heard people recall it. Oh, the perfects. No, no, no. It's prefect, not
Yeah,
perfect.
that's
Very
really
different.
funny.
Yeah. So prefects have a lot of authority and power. It's a very big deal. I mean, they really help run the school system.
Right.
It's not like the hall monitors here, which, that's a very specific task, right? And it's like, the hall monitors are nothing. Yeah, no, prefects is a big deal. Uh, I mean, that intermediary step.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's right. I don't remember so much because I watched a couple of the Harry Potter movies, but I didn't really get deeply into it. Um, but yeah, I would imagine it would come up. Is Harry a prefect or not?
No, he's not.
So they have prefects in the school.
Yeah, Harry's best friend Ron's one of Ron's brothers is a prefect.
Because I can't see Ron becoming a prefect. The
No, Ron was not a
girl,
prefect.
the girl is absolute total prefect material.
Yes, Hermione for sure. Although I don't think she ever became one, but yeah, she would be perfect.
I mean, she would be the typical
Yes.
that you would absolutely expect because the prefects were interesting. Now, depending on the school, sometimes, like in the previous school that I was in Worcester, they were appointed,
Mm-hmm.
and in Camps Bay, they were appointed and voted for.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So this blew my principal away. He let it slip the one day because I don't know. I was there by him. He always took objections to my behavior in some way, and he had these long discussions, which he never succeeded in the debate, and he would always lost the debate, and he would send me to go and walk around the field in frustration.
Interesting.
So, but he let slip. He said, yeah, but in other words, when they had the vote, I won the vote by just like was a landslide, like super overwhelmingness. And this blew his mind. He just couldn't wrap his head around this. And
Right.
it really intrigued him. Yeah. I blew his mind a lot of times, poor guy, John Ince. But the point I'm trying to make is that typically with the prefects, that they tend to do fairly wellish, in general. I mean, if you didn't do well at all, then all right, this was hard to legitimize you being a prefect. And they weren't necessarily the most popular kids either,
Right.
but there was sort of a kind of a respect for them, even though they weren't always the most likable,
Right.
because they were they had a bit of responsibility to them.
Right.
So that's why Hermione is a good example. Now, she would be somebody who would be both popular and responsible and studious and sort of had it all, so she'd be a slam dunk, so she'd likely be a candidate for like head girl.
Right.
Hermione. Yeah. Which is interesting that Harry likely would not be a prefect because he's in his own bubble.
Right.
Yeah. Just in terms of the way, at least from the schooling point of view, the way it tends to go. Now, he was fairly popular and he's also bright and does well at school. So, yeah, he could sort of come in on it, but, depending on what else was available.
Right.
But he's not necessarily sort of an obvious first go-to candidate because, well, he did make friends, but he was too much of a loner. The loners typically didn't tend to be in the prefects. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, despite the fact that, they may be responsible or sensible, just seldom happened. Yeah.
Yes. True.
Interesting system. Again, it's hierarchy, which I didn't really care for. I was a terrible prefect. Yeah. I was one in junior school too, by the way, for 2 years.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. That would be 6th and 7th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's no seniors, so it's really fascinating because, you get given quite a bit of responsibility. I mean, when you line up for this, when the bell rings at school, everybody lines up and then you walk to the classes. Well, the ones who are in charge of getting everybody to line up and stand in the lines, that's it, and you're seeing to discipline really, and like bullying, and I know kids getting up to mischief or whatever, you take them to principal, they get a caning. So you have lots of power. It's amazing.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did not have anything even remotely.
Yeah.
Like we didn't even have hall monitors at my school.
Wow, interesting.
I don't think we had anything even remotely close to that kind of a thing, which is kind of fascinating, but
it is. But to me, I don't know. Now when I think of it, I don't think it's a good system because nobody ever trained us, taught us how to be in authority, how to be leaders, and you just kind of did your whatever and mostly the people took it from what came before.
right.
So you have this culture being passed on. That's a really crap culture, and of course, a lot of the prefects abuse their authority. In some of the English schools, in the boarding schools, the prefects could give canings.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was grossly abused, I mean, real horror stories of some of the kids that go through that.
I can imagine.
In Pink Floyd, Stand Still, Laddie. What's happening there is the kid is getting a caning. All right, not by a prefect, by a teacher, but in that environment, it's amazing. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that the kid is busy getting a caning.
Right.
In that, you can't have your meat if you don't eat your pudding.
Yeah.
Or at least the other way around. You can't have your pudding if you don't eat your meat. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of stuff. So, sorry, I'm going on tangents here. It's fascinating stuff, but it relates to the ease. So for me, this whole thing with the prefects and authority, I don't see that any school system should leave kids unauthorized, like your dogs now,
Right,
right?
right,
You
right.
cannot leave them alone. You have to supervise them until they've learned. And
Yeah.
you have to be there every single second. And if you look at animals, that's one thing that I do respect with animal culture is parenting.
Mm-hmm.
You watch that mother lion, she's watching that cub. Every moment it's playing with the other cub. The moment it gets too rough and out of hand, boom, comes that paw and it smacks the two of them, and they both get the reprimand. No, you've gone too far now, right?
Yep.
So they very sharp on that.
Yes.
So yes, they are training the kids to be appropriately hierarchical, but they are still training the kids. The kids don't run away and do their own things like those elephants.
Right. Exactly.
So at least the education is on point. Yeah.
It's kind of like oh God, what was that horrible book that I hated so much?
Lord of the
Lord of
Flies.
the Flies. Yes.
Oh my goodness, me too.
God,
Yeah.
I absolutely despise that book, but
Me
it
too.
is
Me too. Yeah.
interesting thought process of what might happen, to children who are left to their own devices.
Yes, because we have hierarchy is our system. It's the paradigm,
Right.
but it's become civilized.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That is
So we have hierarchy, but it's no longer physical hierarchy.
right.
Kids who understand that this is the system adopt this, but they don't put in those restrictions, right?
Yes.
So they just go crazy like in Lord of the Flies.
Yep.
They take it to its logical extreme,
Yep.
which is, what animals do. The exact same thing.
Yep.
We have laws which prohibit that from happening.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And we forget that. We forget that. So you still have it underneath, though.
Right.
I mean, you do have exceptions to it, which is great, where you see true cooperation, for instance, and collaboration even better. This is quite magical. But for the most part, it's underneath it all, and people have just found more civilized ways of
Mhm.
dominating. Yeah.
It's true. That is a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is all animalistic and barbaric. It's just that we've made it somehow
Exactly.
shinier and more acceptable.
Exactly. We've shifted it from physical to psychological
Right.
and
Right.
emotional. Yeah. Yeah. So it's more civilized dominance. Yeah. Still
I that,
dominant.
yeah, that's a great term. That is a great term.
Yeah. Civilized dominance.
I love it.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
But I was saying with the ease, the thing that really, really used to get me on the most regular basis, that was I never finally resolved this, was how to greet people all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The awkwardness of greeting, because you walk in the hallways, in the passages, and it's people after people. I'm aware of them, and I have to take their awareness,
Right.
my awareness of them, into cognizance.
Right.
And that required for me a tremendous effort.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
It's
very
interesting that you relate to this. I don't know if I've ever had a conversation where I've shared this, and where somebody understands exactly what I mean. So I'm assuming you experience the same thing.
to me, it's one of those things that it's almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Um it's like a nicety that exists for no particular reason.
Yes.
Like we don't really need to be doing this, like
Yes.
especially if it's somebody that you know really well or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
do we really need to go through the whole like, oh, hello, how are your children? Because nobody actually wants to have that conversation. It's just that you're doing it because you feel you need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
interesting.
for me, it put my capital diplomacy to test.
Mm,
And it's fine to do it on isolated occasions, but moment after moment after moment, you're walking down the hallway and the line is on the other side going the opposite way.
right,
It's 20, 30 kids or even more. We were typically between 20 and 30 kids, or close on the 30 side per class.
right.
So if there are 2 or 3 classes coming out, you got 100 kids walking by you. That was rough. That
Right.
was very rough for me. And it was, what made it so difficult was that there was it was a situation which I didn't see what the ideal way of being, the ideal solution or approach. There wasn't the ideal to it. Because if I ignore people, well, now I'm going to have this problem of being, stuck up and unfriendly, which can cause me even more problems. But now I don't want to be phony and false either. So I never figured it out what the solution would be. But I suppose now, if I was in that same situation, I would just have my own general happiness and exude that.
Right.
And if people greeted me, I'd greet them back. Otherwise, I just sort of have my own bubble, which would include everybody. I'd just be inclusive, like I'm greeting you all at once rather than individually. I think that's the way I would probably solve it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Now when I do meet people, I'm not ill at ease meeting people at all. I it's quite the reverse. I'm very at ease, and I'm proactive in it as well.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I greet them. I say, hello, how are you? And when I say, how are you? It's not that perfunctory, how are you, that Americans favor. I mean, I remember going into a store. I told you the story, right? One of the first times we went, and, oh, how are you? And I said, oh, I'm very well. And there was no response. No, it's like, why did you ask me if you don't want to know?
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is the kind of like
perfunctoriness.
weird nicety that you're not actually interested in. It's just done out of habit. It's not like this is something that they're actually interested in knowing. Which is,
so now when I meet and greet people, I don't care, even if it's like the checker, I stop.
Right.
I ask because I am interested in the response. And when I do say that, they realize I'm really interested in knowing. And if they don't respond, I say, no, I really want to know.
Yeah.
And, and then they realize that I'm genuinely interested, and it changes the whole interaction. And I don't ask if I'm not genuinely interested.
Right.
But, I have such a deep interest in people that I am pretty much, I don't care who you are. I'm interested, Yeah. And, you can see the niceness that's wanting to come out in people. And you just have to give that, you just have to ask for it, and sort of open that door, and it comes out. And then you build relationships, even with casual people, which is fantastic, and you get that blossoming, that sunshine, that genuine connectivity, which is such a great joy, but to do it in a great mass, I don't know, that might be a bit difficult. I'm not sure. If I was in a situation where I had multiple people, one after the other, like I said, I think now I would just retreat into a bubble of comfort, joy of enjoying everybody. And so I wouldn't need to greet individually. I would, by implication, be constantly connecting and greeting and acknowledging and absorbing and enjoying everyone.
Yeah. I like it. Oh, shoot. Past 2:00. I have a hard stop at 2 because I have to get to the gym and get back in time for
Okay. I was thinking about the time, but I was lazy to move an extra 6 inches to look at the time. So
even looking at the clock, and then realized, oh shoot, it's after 2.
Okay. I'm very keen to meet more of Aurora, by the way.
Me too. Well, I'm still totally kind of feeling her out and seeing who she is and what she's about. So
So document.
Time will tell.
It's just important. It's really important somehow. More than just I'm joyful for you that you have Aurora. There's moreness to this.
Yes, I agree.
And I want to know more. I'm peculiarly motivated. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah. Over and above my care and interest for you and my joy for you, there's a moreness here.
I agree.
And I'm recognizing that. So the moment that came on, boom, it sucked me in really potently.
Yeah.
Okay, you gotta go. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much, Phil.
All right. See you next time. I love it. Bye, Erica. Bye. That was fun, Erica. What am I doing? Yes.